spend 40 hours at a job you don't like, that's 50% of your life. Right? So when you start looking at it that way, it's like, wow, I got to focus on doing stuff that I want to do and making money while I'm doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So at what point then, after you've done all these companies, did you decide coach, entrepreneurship coach and financial coach is what you wanted to pivot into? Or how did that come about?
Well, I turned 50, so I'm 61 now. So I turned 50. We moved. We sold our money pit of a house. Both of our mothers died. This was 2010, 2011. And I sort of hit that midlife. That's actually, I don't think I'll live to be 100. But let's just say I hit this sort of midlife pivot point. Like, okay, what's the second act? Right? What is my second act going to be? That's when I sat down and created a purposeful business pretty much for the first time in my life. I said, what do I want? I want to be location independent. I will be an empty nester. We're empty nesters now, although everybody's back because of the COVID, but that's a temporary thing. I don't want to have an office in New York City for $10,000 a month rent, right? I don't want all of these things. Yeah. Right. So there's a whole list of don'ts and a whole list of, this is what I want, and a whole list of things that I could take it or leave it. And then when I stepped back, I said, you know what? I've been coaching people anyway, pretty much pro bono for years. Let's see what that's all about. I mean, I wasn't 100% sure that it was going to stick. I mean, there are always doubts. But then once I got in it and once I got that first client, it's like, this is not a hobby. This is a business. This is real. People are paying me real money for my expertise. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. So how did you, actually, let's get that one. Let's talk about your book, FQ Financial Intelligence.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, you talked about a little bit about how it was a course first and then turned into a book. So what did you develop that course for first?
Okay. So I was at a conference in Bangkok, sitting with a bunch of other coaches talking about how to do group coaching, right? Of all the business models in the world, trading time for money is probably the worst one, right? Just think about it. You can't scale. You're limited, right? Unless you're going to charge $1,000 an hour like a lawyer. And I don't think they're worth anywhere near that, but that's a story for another day. So it's inefficient. But if you can do group coaching, then you can get some scalability. I like working one-on-one, and even with my financial stuff, I work one-on-one. But I said, okay, I've always had this goal of writing a program to teach people my philosophy of money.
Yeah.
And I think it's very different than a lot of the cookie cutter stuff that you see out there. Very much a contrarian, very much a researcher. I dive deeply into things. I don't skim along the surface. And so so after that conference, I came home. I wrote a 18 chapter table of contents, and I started writing. And 50 days later, I'd written 96,000 words. And I had my course. And then I got a dozen volunteers. I set up Zoom chats and all sorts of stuff with them. And I went through the program with them. And then just as I was ready to launch, a few people said, hey, Henry, this would make a really good book. You should publish this. And that's where it took me down that year-long rabbit hole of hiring a copy editor and a designer and having all these, I have 250 infographics. I had to get them all converted so they would print. I never thought I would ever print this thing. So that was a whole big thing. And again, with the idea of being group coaching, although now the way I do it is I still do it one-on-one like I do the entrepreneurial coaching. Eventually, once I achieve critical mass and get a following and become I'm making air quotes while I do this. You can't see the video, a thought leader or whatever, then I'll grow into the group coaching experience for people. But for now, you read the book and I'll teach it to you.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned you have some contrarian ideas about finance, and I know everybody listening to this podcast, myself included, are always interested in financial, let's say, tidbits. So what are some of your financial contrarian ideas and the basics that you cover in your book?
There's a whole bunch of them. One that jumps out at me is this idea of the social safety net, Social Security. I wrote chapter 17 is called Deader Than Disco, and it's all about the stuff that you got to do at end of life. Wills, DNRs, all that stuff. If you think that the government is somehow going to bail you out for your poor planning, you got another thing coming to you, right? They talk all about Social Security, and Trump is trying to eliminate Social Security and all of this stuff. It's like, if you maxed out, if you put the maximum amount of Social Security, right, there's a cap on it as to how high it goes. From the time you're 22 years old until 65, that is a lot of money. And that 22-year-old money has 3 times the buying power that it does now. So you've put a boatload of money into this system. And if you max out, you're going to get $3,800 a month or something like that. That's maximum, and very few people do that.
Yeah.
I get the thing from Social Security that says, because I'm 61, I can collect, I think it's 66 in 4 months because they've indexed it a little bit. I think it's about $2,500 a month. I don't want to sniff at that, and it's taxable.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to say, oh, $2,500, but in the New York metropolitan area, you can't live on that.
Right.
Are you kidding me? It's like, so I don't even know what I'm going to, I mean, I've planned way ahead of that. So I have no idea. I don't need that money. I don't have to collect Social Security. I really don't. And I don't know if I ever will. And that's a blessed place to be. But that's my point in the book. It's like, you should get to the point where that don't even matter anymore. You are financially intelligent. You're financially independent. You are the kind of the ruler of your own domain, your financial domain. That's what I'm striving for. That's part of it.
Right.
So I think that's a bit contrarian, because every time I talk about rolling it back, yeah, I understand there are 50 million people in this country living below the poverty line, which is 28 grand a year for a family of 4. I mean, that's a small amount of money.
Right.
Anyway, so that's one little thing from the book.
Okay, excellent. So I also, again, behind you there's a lot of trading screens. So do you cover your trading philosophy in the book, and or even if not, like what's your basic trading philosophy, since you said you're not a day trader?
Well, there are 4 kinds of traders that I describe in the book. There's day traders, scalp traders, get in the morning, out in the afternoon, right? Never hold a trade overnight, right? It's too expensive to hold a trade overnight. Second thing would be a swing trader. So a swing trader looks to chop something out of the channel. Maybe we buy on a Thursday and we'll sell in 2 weeks. There's no real time frame there, but it's a short-term trade. You're looking for imperfections. Something's been oversold, something's been overbought, and you're trying to make a short-term profit. I'm the third one, which is a position trader. So I'll find something I like, I'll establish a position, and I have rules for how you do all this. What I call 2%, 6% rule. So if you have $1 million in your portfolio, no stock should be less than 20 grand, but you can leg in. You don't have to buy it all in the first tranche.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be higher than 60 grand. That forces a level of diversity to diversify your portfolio. You don't have all your eggs in one basket. You have your eggs in a bunch of baskets, right? And then the final one would be to buy and hold, which is like, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to hold it till I die.
Right.
And people have done that strategy and done quite well. I can't argue with it, but if you buy the wrong stuff, you're in some trouble.
Sure. Are there particular sectors that you like and focus on and spend more of your time in?
I'm always overweight pharma. I have been for 30 years.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprising if 30% on any given day, and it is now, is in pharma. Why? Healthcare in the system in the U.S. is broken. I think it's what I call BBR, broken beyond repair. There's no rhyme or reason to how any of these things are done. There's an opacity in the pricing that's mind-boggling. I'm a type 2 diabetic. So my insurance company pulled a drug that I was taking, an injectable drug, because it was too expensive. They said you have to fail on 2 other drugs, but I could buy the drug for a quarter of the price from a Canadian pharmacy, right? It's the same brand. It's not even a generic. It's the same branded drug. In what world does that make any sense? So though the imperfection of the system is one of the things that makes it so profitable, as much as I hate to say it, as long as they're making outsized profits, I want a piece of that, right? I'm overweight tech now. I've been overweight tech, just for a little while. I jumped back in that waterfall decline. I started really not even nibbling, but taking big bites. I've owned Apple for a long time, but I started biting some of the other stuff because it's just gone kind of parabolic. Yeah, I want to have a part of that. But I invest in stodgy old industrial companies and dividend payers. I avoid the flavor of the month. I think Snowflake went public today. 120 pre-market, went off at like 250. No. Let's wait. I'm sure there'll be tons of money to be made in the short term. I don't need that. Yeah. One of the phrases I use is I believe in get rich slow schemes. So I'm okay with that. I know, for having traded for 40 years, I bought my first stock when I was in high school, that you can make money this way. Overtrading is bad. I mean, just be patient and look for the real market pivot points. You were talking about the contrarian thing. I write a by month, twice a month newsletter, and so I wrote about my followers were asking me to cover the stock market, so I said I cover the stock market. And how come it's gone parabolic since the COVID? Yeah. And I said very bluntly, I said, you're not going to like what I have to say, but the market doesn't care. The market doesn't care that 40 million people lost their job. The market doesn't care that thousands of businesses are going to go bankrupt. It doesn't care that the GDP was down 30%. It just doesn't care. It's not an important driver to the market. That's very sobering for people, and it's terrible. It's awful because we're talking about people's lives, but that's how markets work. They're pretty agnostic. They don't have emotions. They don't care. Right? So
no, I think that's a great thing to point out too.
You would never hear somebody on the airwaves say that the market doesn't care that 40 million people. It's quite the contrary.
It is.
They're going to say it's awful and how can the market do this? And it's because the market doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly. The market does what it does. Also, what's your favorite chapter in your book? If you had to just pull out one.
Chapter, I think it's chapter 15. It's called Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves. It's all about stupid ways to lose your money. Everything from multi-level marketing to Ponzi schemes to the lottery to, you name it. Just all of the massively stupid things to avoid for you to, that will just cost you tons of money. Right? I actually really enjoyed it. I even said it. I said, this is my favorite. This is the one I was really looking forward to writing. And there are just scores of, I probably barely scratched the surface on all the scams and things that are out there.
Yeah. So as someone in finance, what's your thought on what's happening with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
I know a lot of folks. Well, you know what? Since you asked, I'll tell you my little Bitcoin story.
Sure.
So I guess it was 2 years ago. I was in Austin at a conference, and I did a talk about money. All young people, about 40 people in the room, and so I did a deck, and I put up a chart. And this was right after it had gone up to 20,000 and then fallen back to earth. Okay. So I don't remember when that was, April of 18, something like that. Yeah. So I put the chart up, but I didn't identify what it was. And I asked the people, anybody who's seen a chart before? Well, like 1.5 hands. One went up and one kind of went halfway up to say that they'd seen a chart before. I said, who can identify this financial instrument? Nobody had a clue. So then I popped the little Bitcoin thing on there. And then I asked, how many people are invested in Bitcoin or one of their brethren, Ethereum or any one of those ICOs, anything along that line? 90% of the hands went up, right? So all I could do was just shake my head. It was like, so